I mean, look at this guy. It's like sundowning. I mean, you're seeing these photos of him at the Super Bowl. He was only able to make it to halftime, and then he left early. And then as soon as he left, the Kansas City Chiefs got their first touchdown in a game that was otherwise a blowout after Donald Trump predicted the Chiefs were going to win. Samuel L. Jackson was there in the halftime show, the Kendrick Lamar halftime show, and Samuel L. Jackson was dressed as Uncle Sam. And even Samuel L. Jackson's like, look at that. Look at this guy. What in the world is going on? It was a good troll right there. You had Trump's head ferret from that back shot right there, stormed off the field in halftime. And then while all of this was going on, there's serious things taking place, like all of Donald Trump's threats of like tariffing everybody's backfiring in his face. Beginning Monday, China is implementing its tariffs up to 15% on $14 billion in U.S. exports, including LNG, coal, crude oil, farm equipment, and select vehicles, as reported by the Financial Times. They actually included additional things to tariffs as well. And by the way, before the Super Bowl, I went to my supermarket just to see, I needed to get stuff, but I looked for the price of eggs, $11.49 for eggs. But Dr. Jill Biden was at the Super Bowl. She was rooting for the team that won, Eagles. Eagles. You see her there with her family. Our editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, I think it puts it all in perspective. Check out MeidasPlus.com. He curates MeidasPlus.com. Filipkowski goes, while Musk runs the country, Trump had a productive weekend naming himself chair of the Kennedy Center, picking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, canceling pennies, demanding Google Maps rename Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, inviting only white immigrants from Africa to immigrate to the United States while revoking TPS status, temporary protected status, of Venezuelans and other Latinos. And he also did an executive order trying to save plastic straws. And as Filipkowski says, when do we get to the lower prices thing? When do we get to the lower inflation thing? When do we get to the creating more jobs thing? But MAGA was infuriated by that halftime show. You had all the MAGA influencers like Eric Dougherty saying, raise your hand if you survive the Black nationalist Super Bowl halftime show. Or Matt Gaetz goes, the halftime show you just watched is clearly the regime's response to Trump's historic gains with black men. And as the note here says, Kendrick Lamar was announced as the halftime show several months before Trump won. What do you mean the regime? Like literally, Gaetz, you're the regime. Trump's the regime. Trump's the government. Y'all are just going to pretend for the next 4 years that former President Biden is in power. Y'all are in power. You made a bunch of promises you're not able to keep. So now you're talking about changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which you did a whole publicity stunt before the Super Bowl. And Donald Trump did the whole publicity stunt. We're over the Gulf of America right now is what the captain announced. Donald Trump then said during halftime that he was destroying the pennies. We're getting rid of all of the pennies. Then he did an executive order saying that no more plastic straw, no more paper straws, just plastic straws. So before the game began, Donald Trump did this interview with Bret Baier on Fox. The game was on Fox. And Bret Baier asked Donald Trump, so are you serious about annexing Canada? And then Donald Trump said, yep, I want to make it the 51st state. I'm very serious about annexing it. Here, play this clip.
You know, the Prime Minister said this weekend to a group of Canadian businessmen, he was a private meeting, he said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada, and I'm not going to let that happen. It's too much. Why are we paying $200 billion a year essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it.
Then while Donald Trump was traveling to the Super Bowl, he just like out of nowhere announced that starting Monday, there would be 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum coming into the United States starting on Monday. This just announcement came out of nowhere. No tariffs. Then yes, tariffs. The chaos is really problematic. Here, play this clip.
Tomorrow?
Monday, yeah, tomorrow.
What countries will those go on?
Everybody, steel.
Including Canada, Mexico,
Yeah,
United States?
any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
What about aluminum, sir?
Aluminum too.
10%? That's
10, no, 25%.
25 for aluminum.
25 for both.
For both. And on steel, sir, are you ruling out then Nippon Steel having a 51% stake or higher? They won't have a majority stake?
Nobody can have a majority stake for U.S. Steel. They can for other companies, but not for U.S. Steel. I think you agree with that, Doug, right? U.S. Steel was one of our great companies, and through a lot of stupidity and bad government and also bad management of the company, it lost that luster. But it's going to gain it back, and tariffs are going to help. Tariffs are going to make it very successful again. And I think it is good management now, too. Yeah.
And again, this caught all of these other nations off guard. So, in Canada, they just learned about it because Donald Trump just randomly said it. Trump promises 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, including from Canada. Then the Australian government responded. Australian government scrambles to secure exemptions to Trump's 25% tariff on steel imports. But what they really wanted to talk about, all the MAGAs, was the proclamation signed aboard Air Force One above the Gulf of America, naming everything Gulf of America. And then the Interior Secretary, Doug Burgum, goes, "It's official. Congratulations, POTUS, on the Gulf of America. The Interior Department has implemented your instructions from the executive order on restoring names that honor American greatness. Another big win for President Trump's agenda to make America great again." I mean, a big win? What are you talking about? Google shall hereby name the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And then they spent all their time talking about it. And Donald Trump wanted to make it clear that the bigger news, because it had to be about him, the bigger news of the day was not the Super Bowl, but was about the Gulf of America. Here, play this clip.
Air Force One is currently in international waters, the first time in history flying over the recently renamed Gulf of America. Please enjoy the flight, and we are now about to head westbound to Super Bowl 59.
Wow, you did that well. Make America great again, right? That's what we care about. Okay, here we go. So this is a famous pen now.
So then Donald Trump went back to, Mar-a-Lago, wherever he's going. He spent the whole weekend golfing as egg prices were skyrocketing. But by the way, on Air Force One, Donald Trump continued to talk about occupying Gaza. So just to be clear, occupying Canada, annexing it, conquer it with force. Same thing with Gaza. Here's what he says, that he's committed to buying and owning it. Here, play this clip.
I'm committed to buying and owning Gaza. As far as us rebuilding it, we may give it to other states in the Middle East to build sections of it. Other people may do it through our auspices. But we're committed to owning it, taking it, and making sure that Hamas doesn't move back. There's nothing to move back into. The place is a demolition site. It'll be, the remainder will be demolished. Everything's demolished. I mean, you can't live in those buildings right now. They're very unsafe. But we'll make it into a very good site for future.
Donald Trump was asked aboard Air Force One about Elon's financial disclosures, why they remain secret while Elon's been given access to all of our records, Social Security, medical, you name it, Elon has access to. Play this clip.
Why does Elon's financial disclosure remain secret?
Because nobody's looking at that. We're looking at all the corruption that's taken place. I mean, his financial disclosure is largely the number of shares that he's got in very public companies, and that's not secret at all. If you read that, you'll see a lot. I mean, he talks about his whole thing. I read one where it really gave a very good history of him, but basically it's a number of shares times a certain stock price.
So why is that not public?
It is public. All you have to do is read it.
I actually thought this was a good question. So then the reporter asked Donald Trump, so you want to occupy Gaza, so are you going to welcome the Palestinians here? to the United States the same way you did an executive order where you're welcoming just the white South Africans can immigrate to the United States under Trump's executive order. On the other hand, Trump's Venezuelan supporters who were here under TPS and the family members of Trump supporters who were here under temporary protected status because they fled Maduro, Donald Trump cut deals with Maduro, the dictator in Venezuela, to send the Venezuelans back to Maduro to get killed and tortured by Maduro, or the Venezuelans can go to concentration camps in either El Salvador or at Guantanamo Bay. South Florida, these are Trumpy areas right now. But the white South Africans, they can come here. But what about the Palestinians? Donald Trump goes, I don't know. They're too far. They're too far. South Africans, the white South Africans, very close. Palestinians, too far. This is, just play the clip.
Would you accept Palestinian refugees into the United States since you're looking to other countries to accept them?
I think it's a very far distance for them to travel, but I'd have to look at individual cases. But I do think that coming into the United States, we've taken a lot of people, but coming into the United States, it's a long way for them to travel. They're far away from their families and their friends and everything else. I think they'd be very happy staying in the general area with in a place that was safe, where they could be safe and lead a good life. They don't want to go back to Gaza. As I said, I've said it a lot. They only go back because they have no alternative. They don't want to go back to Gaza. So we'll see. We hope that we'll be helped by Egypt. We hope that we'll be helped by Jordan. We hope that we'll be helped by other countries. We hope that some of the, like Saudi Arabia and others, can spend some money.
So that's what Donald Trump's been doing. Meanwhile, you have the MAGA influencers saying things like this. The halftime show should have been the Village People with Donald Trump doing the Trump dance on center stage, and you know it. The arena would have gone berserker mode. Would have been viral halftime show, most viral in NFL history. Read the room, NFL. Share if you agree. They hated the Kendrick Lamar halftime show, which was pretty good. Folks, protests are growing as well. We saw even over the past few days, the protests growing in Washington, D.C. This was over the weekend. Shut down the Senate. Shut down the Senate was being chanted for hours. More massive U.S. protests ongoing. Sources here report lots of people are getting ready for protests in the future. But take a look at what's going on in Germany as well. In Germany, you have people protesting against the extreme right-wing parties there. I don't know. I think that's going to look like what Washington, D.C. is going to look like soon as we, the people, start peacefully protesting and letting our voices be heard. Speaking about letting voices be heard, Canadians letting their voices be heard for sure as Donald Trump continues to threaten, harass, and abuse Canada. Canada is standing up. There's a travel boycott, Canadians not coming to the U.S., and then there's an overall boycott of American products. Put it this way, if just 10% of Canadian travel and tourism to the U.S. stops, because that brings in about $22 billion a year annually, that would cause a $2 billion damage if just 10% stop, and would cost 144,000 American jobs in the tourism and hospitality industry here in the United States. Take a look right here at what's going on at the Peace Arch border. Nobody's crossing. I would not be shocked. I know all my Canadian friends who are watching this. So for across, I know MeidasTouch is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest news network right now in Canada. Canadians are not buying American. They are not traveling to America. It is a scarlet letter if you're Canada, and unless you're forced to be here, you are not going here. Canada is uniting and saying no to America because of Donald Trump, and they are uniting like never before. As Charlie Angus, our friend here at the MeidasTouch Network, says, Trump is bragging that Canadians think so little of their own birthright that they are begging to join his gangster crew. Looks like the people in Canada aren't buying his bullshit. The boycott is strong. Do not spend 1 cent in America until the tyranny is gone. Keep it up. Nobody at the Peace Arch border last night. I've never seen the border like this ever. And by the way, a lot of the MAGA Republican senators and Congress members, they're getting very pissed behind the scenes that Trump's cuts to NIH and Trump's cuts to CDC and Trump's cuts to USAID are destroying their states. I'll give you an example. Trump is basically cutting massive spending by NIH. The University of Alabama, for example, gets huge amounts of money from the NIH. University of Alabama, Birmingham is like the biggest employer in the state, and a lot of their money comes from NIH. That's being gutted right now. So Katie Britt, one of the Republican senators from Alabama, says we need maybe a smart targeted approach, Donald. Maybe don't hit Alabama with it. Let's talk about what one of the next big fights is going to be this week. It's important that we focus on this together. J.D. Vance is saying the quiet part out loud. He goes, if a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general and how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. And so what we're going to see right here is, I think, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and the MAGA gangsters, the actual gangster regime, the authoritarian regime, they're not going to follow, and they already aren't. But we're going to see it more pronounced this week, not following federal court orders. And then when they get hit with contempt by the federal judges, they're just not going to do anything. And they're going to say, we're just going to go and be the dictators and not follow court orders. So pay attention to that and the reaction of these federal judges, including Republican federal judges, Trump-appointed federal judges, when Trump and his gangster crew of J.D. Vance and others are saying that they are not going to follow the law. By the way, here's Donald Trump saying just that on Air Force One. Let's play it.
You suffered a couple of court losses, Mr. President, and J.D. Vance said judges aren't allowed to control the executive power. What's your take on that?
But we're going to see what happens. We have a long way to go, and we're talking about fraud, waste, abuse. And when a president can't look for fraud and waste and abuse, we don't have a country anymore. So we're very disappointed with the judges that would make such a ruling. But we have a long way to go. We have to find all of the fraud that's going on. We have tremendous fraud, tremendous waste, and tremendous abuse, and theft, by the way. And the day you're not allowed to look for theft and fraud, etc., then we don't have much of a country. So no judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace.
And finally, I'll do a whole other video take on this, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it here, that Donald Trump just filed a $20 billion amended complaint against CBS for the 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. And he added Ronnie Jackson as a plaintiff because Ronnie Jackson's a member of Congress from Amarillo, and Trump wants to judge shop to keep the case in Amarillo before a MAGA judge. So he's having Ronnie Jackson say that he's a consumer getting a consumer injury by having to watch the 60 Minutes piece back in October of 2024 with Vice President Kamala Harris, and somehow that caused both of them $20 billion in injuries. I mean, I know it's utterly ridiculous there, but it's just also interesting too that you have Ronnie Jackson claiming to be a plaintiff under Texas consumer protection statutes, as Donald Trump and Elon Musk just destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is one of the strongest ways to protect against corporate exploitation of consumers. It's returned about $20+ billion to consumers. So you see what they're doing here. You see their hustle. And we, the people, aren't going to take it. We, the people, are going to rise up peacefully. We're going to peacefully take to the streets. We're seeing that across the country, and we're going to cover all of those protests here peaceful. It's important that we remain peaceful. But people are fed up here. People are fed up in Canada. People are fed up in Europe. People are fed up in Australia. The weakness of Donald Trump is so exposed. You see our enemies just laughing at this, and our allies just horrified to see the United States of America become this idiocracy, kleptocracy that looks like North Korea. It's like just a larger Kim Jong-un. It's embarrassing to be here right now. It's an embarrassing time. This is a humiliating time for Americans who want to respect, who respect our country, actually respect our Constitution, who believe in equality and normalcy and democracy. Well, there you have it. We've got a lot of content, of course, throughout the day. We're going to keep you posted on everything. Follow all of the updates here. Hit subscribe. Help us get to 4 million subscribers. Let's do it. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Midas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.